Yesterday we did our lying down on our back pose, and we got a lovely feeling of being supported underneath our whole body. We were resting down into the upward supportive force of the earth coming up. And today we're going to try and get a similar effect in a standing position, only in a standing position we don't have any contact with the physical support behind us. So we're going to imagine an imaginary support which we'll see as we go into the exercise. So let's come into a nice wide stance here, and let's gather up some energy from the earth, looking up to keep the upper chest center open, keep the collarbones open. And here what we want to do is just bend the elbows, which we'll look at a little bit more as we progress the exercise, and then just lean back, bring those arms up. Now, if we want to get any higher than this, we're going to have to tilt our upper body back a little bit more to help open up the chest region, because if we come to here without tilting our head back, our upper body is going to be pushing down and our arms are pulling up, and there'll be a gridlock standoff, there'll be a conflict there. So if we remove the downward conflict by tilting our head and shoulders back, the arms just drift higher. And then if we turn our heels out, so trying to open up the ground by twisting our heels out, that's going to arch the back and open up that previously conflicted part of the body even more, for the arms to lift up into that now open space. Now here we can't go any further, so we flip our hands over, bend our knees a little bit more, and with an out breath we just puff all the energy out of our body. So we puff all the air out and all the chi out. And now here comes the effect we talked about earlier, where we're trying to now just rest back. And because we don't have the ground underneath us, we can think of just lying back on an imaginary support wall here. And that support wall runs down from the back of our head, back of our arms, shoulders, spine, right down to the sacrum, and importantly, behind the backs of our legs, right down to the backs of the heels. And just as lying on the ground isn't just restricted to the area underneath our body, the ground extends out beyond our body. Let's just think of that imaginary support wall extending out way beyond our body, and in particular way beyond the bottom of our ankles. So that imaginary support wall goes right down into the earth and way beyond the outline of the back of our body. So feeling beautifully supported with our imaginary support wall, we can even think, if it makes us feel more relaxed, of that support wall as being an ocean. a gently rippling, rocking, lapping ocean underneath us, completely supporting us from head to foot and beyond. Beyond, extending out way beyond the boundaries of our physical body. So we could call this state of being where we're totally relaxed, totally supported, and totally open to the larger sphere of the universe as our ocean consciousness. Our awareness has grown out beyond the boundaries of our own physical body, and we feel part of something much larger than ourselves. So now, moving on to the next phase of this exercise, let's think of the back of our body now being itself a wall, and that wall having lavishings of paint being applied to it, and that paint is just running down the back of that wall. So if you think of that paint as streaming down from head to foot, just let that paint carry your body down, still leaning back into our imaginary ocean, but that paint still leaning back, but that paint is starting to flow now, starting to flow all the way again, particularly noticing the lower body, which is often very much off our radar, that paint streaming down the backs of our legs and right down to the backs of our ankles and heels. So we reach a point now where our arms are just dangling. We're still looking up, we've still got our neck slightly tilted back, so we can imagine an imaginary support cushion behind our neck and between our shoulders, and we're still resting back all the way down to the backs of our ankles. Now, before we go on, we could call that phase of our movement as our streaming consciousness. We've moved now from our ocean consciousness to a feeling of being carried in a direction which in this case is down into the earth and even beyond the earth. Now we move to our next phase, still leaning back with our whole body all the way down to the backs of our ankles. And then what we do is we just apply a little bend of the elbows, okay? Now, if we're quite well connected and you bend your elbows, there'll be a little kick out of your sacrum, your tailbone. Now, most people probably won't get that effect straight away, but it's an action that generates weight through the lower section of the arms, because now they've moved from dangling, where that field of gravity is just streaming straight through them. When we put a little kink in the elbows, we've suddenly got that field of gravity applying now, generating weight through those lower arms. And if your body is fairly sensitive and well connected, the weight-bearing pose that it goes into straight away kicks the tail out, arches the spine, and slightly widens the knees. It's ready for load bearing. It's not optimum for the body to load bear with a tucked tail. Okay? It goes into an arched position in response to the message, oh, here's some weight we have to distribute evenly through the body. So here we are, and now we still need to lean back. Now, it's so important to lean back all the way down to the backs of the heels, because if we don't, we tend to just lean back with our upper body and we overbalance. And then if we're overbalancing, we go into tension. The tummy locks up, the thighs lock up, the ankles lock up. So we can remedy that very simply by just resting back into the backs of our legs, into the sacrum, and all the way down to the backs of the heels, and the body will correct itself. So remembering that our objective here, or certainly one of our most important objectives here, is to experience complete rest in an upright position, where we don't have to lie on the floor to allow free passage of chi and breath through the body, and for our body to remain open and relaxed and moving itself towards optimum organization. So let's move on. Now, in this carrying posture, we're still leaning back, still got our elbows bent. Let's carry this imaginary weight round to the side, turning at the waist. So take the whole body around, and then just make sure, just check in that we're dropping back. We're resting back all the way down to the backs of the heels. And another important thing is just check that we're resting back into our imaginary cushion behind our neck and the upper spine. So very nice open position. And if you can imagine carrying a real heavy weight, notice how grounded you feel, and your feet should be nice and flat and evenly weighted. Now, this may take some time to get a feel for all this new organization of the body that comes with relaxing, because most of us have quite distorted standing postures because of tension and because we don't use our awareness of the space and the environment around us to reference our actions and how we organize our bodies. We've forgotten that our bodies are interactional devices. They're not designed to operate within a vacuum. They're designed to operate within a larger system of forces and energies and supports that impart and receive energies from us. So typically when we're interacting with our surroundings, we're releasing tension, which is just trapped energy inside the body, and we're receiving in return fresh flowing energy drawn from the the surrounding environment around us. So let's just play. You imagine an imaginary big inflatable exercise ball, or what we sometimes call a fit ball. We imagine we've got a big ball of energy here, and we can subtly feel its weight, its substance. So let's just carry that ball around while still leaning back. You'll find that tension will kick in as soon as you stop leaning back, in particular all the way down to the backs of the ankles. So it's good to move and then pause and then just check. Are you leaning back all the way down to the backs of our heels? Now, this can lead to further movements which we can just explore infinitely, where we can take this weight out into any shape or form or size while still leaning back, and it produces these beautiful flows of energy between our body and the energies around us. And as soon as we stop leaning back, everything locks, breathing locks down, everything gets tense through our breathing and through our muscles. So just leaning back again, and the world just opens up. That energetic dimension just is just open and accessible to us. Now, another thing we need to check, so ankles and heels are really important to check that you're leaning back into. Backs of legs, but also just checking in with sacrum. Some people will have typically, their typical position, me being one of them, is that sneakily your sacrum may, and again that's going to lead to a lockdown of the muscles in the front of the body. So just making sure can scan down section by section, just like we did with our lying down exercise. Can just scan down section by section of the back of our bodies, just checking if they're resting back. And again, if you start to rest back with your upper body and lose your balance, it's because you need to do that in conjunction with leaning back lower down in your body, and typically right down to the backs of those heels. So moving that chi ball, and noticing that when we rest back all the way down to the backs of the heels, we get a feeling of impulse, of energy flowing up from the earth and streaming out through our bodies and beyond and out beyond our bodies. Okay, so again, wherever we get locked down, particularly check back to those key points, particularly the backs of the heels, backs of legs, sacrum, maybe back of neck and shoulders, just wherever you're identified most locking sections of your body are. So now here we're into that streaming consciousness again when we're moving like this. But here, when we come back into a stationary consciousness, and even when we're just gathering in like this, we call this gathering consciousness or pooling. So we've had ocean going beyond ourselves, boundaryless consciousness, which is important for us to experience some of the time. We've gone into streaming as the paint streams down the back of our, could imagine your body as a building, down the back of our building. Feels so good. So streaming from A to B. And then as soon as we put that little kink in the elbows, we're into that gathering consciousness. So we're putting a boundary. We're creating a boundary so that we can feel the form and substance now of energies. Yep. We're gathering in and we're putting boundaries, we're holding that energy, and then we can pass it out and stream it through. Keeping open and relaxed by resting, always resting those yang channels, the yang part of the body back into our imaginary wall. Or if you like, you can still think of lying down on that imaginary ocean. Lying back on that imaginary ocean as you stream. So we can combine any of these three states of consciousness. We can have ocean consciousness and stream some beautiful currents out through that ocean as well. And then we can gather in from the ocean. Gather in from the ocean and feel like there's something filling us up. Filling up all those empty compartments that don't get filled in enough. So, good. Now, in future videos, what we're going to look at is a whole concept of dealing with emotion. How these two exercises that we've introduced so far, the lying down on the earth exercise or lying down on the floor exercise, and now the standing exercise, how these exercises can be used to deal with issues that involve our thought processes, our emotional processes, and our physical processes. So using these different states of consciousness, using these beautiful connected energy flows, connecting us to the greater environment around us, this is a very different approach to dealing with our issues.